Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. And we want to thank you for joining this TechStrong DevOps experience. We are here with AppCD, Cortex, Dell Technologies. Joining us today, my name is Jared, and I want to welcome you again for joining our TechStrong Learning program. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand afterwards. We're going to send you a link in your inbox after we conclude, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Please go ahead and submit your questions in the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen. You can join us in the chat, tell us where you're tuning in from, share your experience, your comments, your understanding on the matter. We want to hear, we want to engage with you, so keep up the chat and the Q&A right there. We've also got some resources on the left side of your screen. I'll be adding some more here in a moment as well, so go ahead and click through that, look through those, and let's go ahead and kick off today's program. We've got Platform Engineering, Building the Future of Digital Transformation. We're joined with Asif Awan, co-founder and Chief Product Officer at AppCD, Justin Reock, Head of Developer Relations at Cortex, Hope Lynch, Senior Technology Strategy Advisor, Kat Cosgrove, Lead Open Source Advocate at Dell Technologies, and then Mitch Ashley, CTA at Futurum Group and CTO at TechStrong, here with myself. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Mitch, you want to go ahead and take it away from here while I turn my camera off?
Wonderful. Thank you, Jared. Thanks for kicking things off. This is like the all-star team. This is such a great panel. But I'm sure everybody says that. I really, truly mean it. This will be a lot of fun and a great topic to be talking about that. So as Jared said, this is going to be a conversation amongst folks who've played different roles in terms of platform engineering, maybe done it, it's been a big part of their career, or helped set it up, or been through generations of it. And that's kind of our goal in this conversation, is speaking to you as the audience, knowing that some people may not have actually gotten started on their journey of, what do I do with platform engineering? My boss said we need one, and I'm trying to figure out what one is. Or maybe you're already down the path, and you've kind of got some questions about, think about, should we do this, or is that a bad idea, or what's going on? So think about this as not us talking at you, but all of us talking with each other. So we'd love to have you join us in chat, and you're welcome to, give us your thoughts. Hey, that's a really good point. Or I wonder about this. I'm just thinking about this idea, or this came up in a meeting the other day. Or I like what Kat said there, plus, whatever. Or you can also put questions into the chat or into the Q&A tab, and we'll roll that into our discussion today and take it from there. So it will be very dynamic and kind of organic, and hopefully that'll get the most information out, share the most kind of experience and knowledge, et cetera, that we can, not only with us, with you, but also you back to us. So please participate. We'd love to have you join us. The session is being recorded. Everybody will get a link with the recording after today's session. So you can take notes. You can also go back and share it with your friends or listen to it again. All right, let's get underway. We want to do a little bit more in-depth, just introductions, just kind of know where everybody's coming from. Justin, I'm going to ask you if you would go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Oh, sure. Thanks. So Justin Reock, head of DevRel for Cortex. My background is primarily in software development. I spent a good 15 years writing code, and then moved into more architecture style work, and had the chance to start a small OS PMO in a company called Earthlink, which was a ISP, and went from there to OpenLogic to be their chief architect for a while. Got a chance to work even more on wonderful things like CentOS and Kubernetes when that came out and that sort of thing. And then now went to work for Gradle for a little bit, focusing on developer productivity engineering, and now focus pretty much just exclusively on internal developer portals and how they relate to developer productivity, developer experience.
That's why we have panelists like Justin join us today. Wonderful. Thanks, man. Kat, good to see you again. Introduce yourself, if you would.
Hello, everybody. So I'm a lead open source advocate at Dell Technologies currently, but I have been around in DevOps generally for a hot minute. I was a developer advocate at Pulumi, an infrastructure as code tool, for a while. And before that, a developer advocate at JFrog. I did used to be a software engineer also at JFrog before I was a developer advocate. I was an embedded Linux developer, though, which is a different kind of pain and has very little to do with DevOps, but I've gotten better now. And now I like to make sure that people are as productive as they can be and as open source as they can be.
Wonderful. Thanks to you for all your contribution leadership in the open source realm too. So, fantastic. Oh, Hope Lynch, good to see you again, my friend. Welcome. Tell folks about yourself.
Good to see you as well. So most recently, Senior Director of Platform at CloudBees. Prior to that, a range of things. So I've been a product manager of an IoT platform, of platform engineering teams, led a systems engineering team before platform engineering became the term, and it was systems engineering, which is effectively the same thing. I've done R&D strategy. So I like to tell people if there is a role in tech, I have probably done it or been adjacent to it at some point. So yeah, it's my wheelhouse. I love it.
So you may be platform engineering, you may be platform engineering adjacent, but either way it counts, right?
Yes.
You're with it. All right. Okay. Asif, newer friend. It's good to see you again, my friend. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thank you for having me on the panel. I'm Asif Awan. I am the co-founder and chief product officer at AppCD. I have close to 30 years of experience building enterprise products. I started as a software engineer. I've been through various different domains and realms, building products and solutions. This is my fourth startup. First couple of them were in the security space. First was in mobile security. The second one was in container security, when containers were starting to just take off. In 2015 is when I founded that company, was acquired by Qualys. The last startup was in the MLOps space, and currently we are at AppCD focused on this new way of auto-generating IAC files, which is referred to as infrastructure from code. Okay, so that is what we are doing, and we are trying to enhance the developer productivity by providing this automation. So looking forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Interesting. The infrastructure as code thread kind of runs through our experiences. So fantastic. This isn't a beginner's intro class or something like that, but we do want to kind of give a starting place for everybody. Sort of like DevOps, there's no manifesto for platform engineering that says it's these three things, and if it's not those three things, it's not platform engineering. It can be a little bit confusing, but I also think in some ways, that seems like platform engineering has kind of been pretty adaptable, and part of its rise happened during some of the economic pressures of last 2-3 years, where people were worried about developer productivity. Well, what about everybody else's productivity? But let's what can we do with that? And it seems that it's kind of helped platform engineering take off. Let's, as a group, create a working definition. Doesn't have to be the right definition, just in total is kind of what we're thinking about what platform engineering is. Anybody want to take the brave first step and throw out the first idea for what is platform engineering?
Yeah, I can.
I'm happy to.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, take a shot.
Oh, I was just going to say that for me, with platform engineering, definitely developer focused. You are treating the platform as a product, and you're ensuring that your developers are being served as customers. So self-service capabilities, reusable components, automation to stream the software development lifecycle, all of those are part of it.
Okay, great place to start. You were jumping in there too, Asif. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just about to start at a slightly higher level of abstraction based on what Hope said, which is at a very high level, just removing all the complexities in the day-to-day lives of the developers, right? And how can they go through the entire software development lifecycle as quickly, as efficiently, as easily as possible, right? A lot of generic terms, but that is what it means, right? And through various different iterations of innovations, right, that come about, we have containers, then functions, and so on. Obviously, the tools that are provided would change, but the end goal is still the same, right? How do you make, whether it's new Gen AI based tools being available, how do you provide those tools in a way that they help the developers enhance their productivity, right? Towards the end goal of releasing business applications as quickly as possible.
I would like to add in also with a bit of what it's not. You'll notice a lot of repeating of like, this is about increasing developer productivity. This is about increasing velocity. This is about like releasing more consistently. Those are all things that are also central to DevOps. Platform engineering does not exist without DevOps. It is an implementation of DevOps practices and many tools that we associate with DevOps. So the like you sometimes see one company in specific, engage in like an online and at conferences marketing campaign for platform engineering that says DevOps is dead, as if platform engineering has like risen up and beaten it to death. That's not true. It's just marketing. That's all it is. Platform engineering is rad. It is an implementation of DevOps. It has the same goals, and it's using some of the same like tools that we consider central. So DevOps is good. Platform engineering is great. We would not have one without the other, though. The two have to exist together.
110%. And I think people really need to understand that there's no mutual exclusivity happening here, and that it's actually a very natural evolution. If you look at productivity practice going all the way back to lean, agile, I know everybody likes saying that, oh, that's where DevOps came from. And there is a lot of truth to that. But then what happened, right? There was a sort of fair criticism when DevOps began to commoditize that there might not be enough of the dev in DevOps, right? In a lot of businesses and what they're putting in place. So then we said, well, we need to, where's the current bottleneck? Wow, now it's in the prefrontal cortex of the developer. That's where the primary bottleneck is. So now we need to start thinking about developer experience. And what happened with that? Well, now we need CI/CD to also include the method of creation of software. And I think what you have now is this sort of merger of DevOps, productivity thinking, but with technology leaders adopting a more product management mindset, which then allows us to think of developers as customers and package and deliver what would normally be considered ITSM delivery type of things in what we're now calling platform engineering. But it's a practice, right? Yeah. And it's about putting together a permutation of stuff from the CNCF landscape diagram and then hopefully improving throughput and ultimately profitability for the business.
I find it ironic that we forgot about the developer, quote unquote, when in the Phoenix project, one of the number one issues was I can't get an environment built for me.
Mm-hmm.
I need a platform. So it's kind of interesting. It does seem to, it definitely, there are gaps in everything, right? Gaps in DevOps. And I think we kind of forgot about how do we help everyone be more productive, not just developers, but how do we get things done more quickly and how do we automate? And can we standardize some things take some variables out where we don't need them to be variables and some things in where we do.
I mean, that's true for like absolutely every aspect of running a business and engineering and the history of computers. And it has always been true and will always be true. Like literally every single advancement we've ever had in technology, in computing, in tooling, whatever, has been a result of like, I need to do more of this faster. So we figure out how to slap some kind of abstraction layer on top of it. And that's revolutionary and really, really great for some period of time until we need to do more stuff, even faster. And we have to chuck another abstraction layer on it. That's just how like the evolution of computers has worked. So that's just, we're seeing that happen in real time again.
Interesting point. Yeah, I agree with you. One creation begots another need, right? We find out that's a lot of startups happen actually. I had this need, so I went and created a company to fulfill it. So for folks that maybe are beginning their journey, if you think you've got a need of why you should be doing platform engineering, and you've got some working definition of what you think that is. Are there common places where people start? In DevOps, most of the time people start with a CI part of CI/CD to implement continuous integration, build out from there. Is there a central part of the platform engineering universe, or is it just kind of depends on whose company you're talking about, your team?
I think the state that we're in right now, we're still a little bit leaderless, to be honest with you. And by that, I mean we have lots of leaders, but kind of not necessarily aligned. We launched with University of Victoria a couple of weeks ago a program called Bridges Summit. So I'm very excited about 501(c) nonprofit style thing, trying to pull together folks who are thinking a lot about developer productivity and developer experience. So I just don't think we're there yet. I think DevOps has had more time to commoditize, to come up with definitions that we can agree with. I think if you ask anyone, even in this panel, what a minimally viable platform looks like, you'll probably get 4 different answers still.
Yeah.
Good point. Maybe we should talk a little bit about what is a platform. I don't want to make that, we could spend 3 webinars talking about that. And let me just throw this out. Some of the things that strikes me as making things a platform is, rather than assembling a group of loosely coupled technologies and trying to make them work together and integrating, you've got some fabric that's helping that to happen, whether it's from one company or multiple. Oftentimes it's data, right? Data that's shared across those, because I need data for workflows, or I need data for, security. And then the other part of it is, oftentimes there's a workflow part of that platform, right? It isn't just for development. It's about how it gets into production or for testing or whatever it might be. So, to me, those are a couple common characteristics. You're welcome to disagree, but love to hear what other folks think.
If I may add to that, at least in my experience of working for larger enterprises, what I've noticed is that the need typically arises from the security or compliance or governance point of view, right? I mean, when you see that different teams or within teams, developers are doing stuff on their own, right? I mean, they are picking up open source things. So whenever there is a need for consistently enforcing certain policies, you see that a new team, call it whatever, right? Platform engineering, or somebody who is responsible for enforcing that process with the technology by stitching together various different tools or coming up with an end-to-end solution is what typically drives that the creation and the launch of such a team and their offerings.
Great. Security compliance, another great reason. Anyone else want to chime in?
I think it is going to depend on the size of your team and what else is going on at your company. Like, the needs of an engineering team that's 12 people deep are very, very different than the needs of an engineering team that's 300 people deep. So I don't think that there is like a hard and fast answer for like what is a minimally viable developer platform. Like that it depends. I hate the like it depends answer, but in this case, like it just does. Like, the needs of a startup are absolutely not the needs of Microsoft, So and trying to set things up as a startup as though you are an engineering team the size of Microsoft is a mistake. That's going to make things worse for you. It's going to torpedo productivity probably, and also you will fail to set it up as well as Microsoft would have. So I don't think there is a hard and fast answer. I think eventually we'll get like a set of best practices based on like likely team size and the stack that you're working in for what an MVP looks like. But right now it is just way too new for that to exist.
And I agree with Kat. And on top of that, I think it goes back to what we've already discussed. Treating it as a product MVP. What are you serving? You're serving what the customer needs. What is the primary customer need? Hopefully you can get something out, have them test it, try it, iterate on it into the future. So within your organization, your MVP should look different than the MVP at another organization if you're actually paying attention to what the developers need and what will help them get their work done in the most effective way.
I think it's a fair question, though, to ask, like, when do we go from developer tool chain to DevOps to platform? And I think like that at the widest abstract, I mean, I 100% agree with all of that. That a 2-pizza team does not need the engineering platform that Microsoft is going to be delivering, right?
Yeah.
But like, that is 100% true. But if you think about it, like dialing back to just sort of the abstraction, it's like, okay, what do we need at minimum? Like, we need source control, we need an IDE. Hopefully everybody's using the same IDE. That's our tool chain. We need a build tool. We need Gradle, whatever. Then it's like, okay, well, now we need CI/CD. So we need Argo CD or Jenkins. We're not supposed to say that. CloudBees. You need a product like that, right? And now we're DevOps, right? But then it's like, well, what do we need after that to become platform? And I think that is a worthy discussion now. I think we're 10 years away from standardizing, just like it took about that long with DevOps. So.
Yeah, people did not take DevOps like super seriously at first. I mean, people will still try to tell you that it's a fad and it's been like 12 years.
But it doesn't work in the enterprise. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Enterprises are doing it. So.
So let me throw in Mark H. just posted a really good comment here. It says, to me, platform engineering is an intent to offer a locally standardized portal, simply access to tools and workflows for its users. Is a logical reaction to complex tech stacks and tool chains. It does not replace other frameworks such as DevOps. It actually depends on DevOps. That supports what you were saying.
I agree. It depends on DevOps. You are building a shopping mall, a technology catalog for your engineers. That's what it is. Yeah, that's exactly it.
And what's the difference between a portal, your developer portal, that's kind of like tools up on the pegboard, just pick a tool and go, just a catalog of tools, and something that's more what a platform engineering team would put together? Justin, that seems like might fit in your.
I have a few opinions on this one. Yes, I think the platform is nebulous, right? The platform is practice, and the practice is platform engineering, right? And so, like I said before, some permutation of all those tiles on the CNCF landscape diagram. I'm not being kind of half serious with that, because it is sort of about like building that piece. But then when that thing gets complex, and when you start finding yourself, doing things like tracking service ownership and stuff like that in spreadsheets, and you find that we've got this great platform and all of our systems are lagging in terms of trying to see what's indicating with that portal. Like we're not taking our platform, I should say, we're not taking full advantage of the platform, right? This is where I think like the use case discussion becomes really, really important, where it's like, okay, we've built this delivery platform. Now, what are the extant problems in the business that we need to solve? Are we spending, 4 hours trying to figure out an operational readiness assessment when instead a portal could which is already integrated with all these pieces of the platform, be telling us when our services are operationally ready? Are we picking somebody through some highly manual onboarding process that takes them 3 months before they can even start really, collaborating properly with the team? Or could we be putting all of that onboarding inside of a portal, right? So it's providing a layer of monitoring, developer self-service, right? And I think essentially cataloging of services and entities so that you can do things like establish easy ownership. It is the reason that I came to Cortex is because how much this abstraction layer can really then push a business even further by being able to cross-functionally align on parts of the platform. Like I want to change a bit of security compliance. We need to go from 90% code coverage to 95% code coverage. And that has to be for every service across the organization. That's a difficult change to make in an organization that's tracking everything on a spreadsheet. That's an easy change to make when that organization is using security scorecards or something that's linked to something that's more of a portal kind of pattern. Right?
Developer guardrails, security guardrails, things like that. You in the middle of what you were saying, you said developer delivery platform. I wrote that down. I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting way to think about it.
All right.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Ooh, that was really cool. I don't know if you meant to do that. That was very cool, Jess.
I forgot I said it. That's usually how it goes.
It's written in chat, so it's now memorialized from the internet forever.
Yeah, put your name behind it and keep it. But one other way I think about it when you say there are tools in a portal. Having access to the tool is not necessarily solving the problem, right? You can still get in a reactive mode. To me, one of the great things about platform engineering is getting teams out of ticketing hell, where they have to submit a ticket for an environment. I need to submit a ticket for this. I need to submit a ticket for that, right? It is establishing a very proactive stance in the organization to help the developers get their work done. And hopefully, you're going to get a ticket from time to time. But for the most part, hopefully they can get their work done without submitting a million tickets.
I think that is one area, too, that helps to really define this, because if you think about it in terms of the old industry terms, automation, orchestration, and then what comes after that one was choreography. Remember that one, choreography? And so the portal, I think lives at the choreography layer, whereas the platform is sort of living at the orchestration layer. And you're right, it's not great for a developer to go have to pull 5 different levers, to get their Kubernetes container spun up, when a choreography abstraction could do all that for them with a single click. And that's where the portal should live, at the choreography layer.
It's kind of, I was thinking about the choreography. It's almost like you're picking up a set of tools, capabilities, things that aid you in your work, but you have underlying it a blueprint of how those things work together and how flow happens across the organization. I didn't need to go do a 3-week project to figure out how do we test software. Here's how we test software. Here's how it fits into your workflow and how it's automated.
Yeah, there's an opinionated stance established in the organization, and you go along that pathway, hopefully.
It is transformative, though. I mean, like, all these things get turned upside down. Like when you actually have a good portal and you have standards and you are opinionated, to your point, Hope, about those standards, silos suddenly become good. Now you have teams that can do things really, really well, but to communicate across all the right cross-functional channels.
Well, you've cut windows in all of the silos at that point. So that's a good thing.
So let me kind of look at the other side of the coin. How do you not standardize to such an extreme that you stifle innovation? People want to try something new, do some experimentation. In some of the data surveys that I've done, that's an important part. Even I'm writing a leadership guide to software. It's about supporting your team to do experimentation and having some of that flexibility. How do you build that into something that you're trying to standardize?
I think that's a culture problem, not a tooling problem. Like, your developer platform should include access to all of the tools and things that you expect and in fact require that your engineers use that are part of your stack, right? But if somebody wants to go off script and try another tool for potential inclusion in your developer platform in the future, for potential inclusion in your stack, that is an engineering leadership, engineering culture question. You shouldn't tell them no within reason, right? Don't let them go try to switch your whole paid product to rely on this one brand new open source project maintained by just his buddy or something. That's obviously unreasonable, but you should empower your engineers to go experiment. If they hear about a cool toy that they think is going to improve productivity or improve the reliability of your tool, let them try it. But
don't convert to the code repository I wrote in Perl this weekend.
No, we're not doing that one.
Perl.
Not Perl.
Do your regular due diligence with onboarding a new developer tool or a new dependency, but you should be empowering your developers to experiment in that way. At least the more senior ones. That's literally part of what you hired them for, is for their broad expertise. So
I wonder too, if you're almost onboarded as you're building up your platform engineering practice, you're almost onboarding what you already have that are going to be part of that. Just use that, put that process and practice right in front. It's kind of like KPI first, right? Just design it with that in mind up front. Do that with that onboarding idea. We are going to try new things. We're going to experiment. We're going to maybe pilot some stuff. We are going to standardize, etc. I'm sorry. I know I stepped on somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just wanted to offer a sort of related but slightly different perspective, is that whatever you build as an abstraction layer, to Kat's earlier points, right, is always going to be limited by the flexibilities that you have of the components that you are using, the underlying component that you're using. And I'll give you a very specific example, right? I mean, the problem that at AppCD that we are trying to address is that eventually what happens is that for deploying a particular class of applications, you just throw in templates in the background. You have Terraform templates, you have Helm chart templates, right? But templates by definition are generic, right? So when you want to apply certain specific security and compliance policies, so what we have noticed, and this is not just in the context of the current startup, but even in my past life, the developers, they end up downloading a lot of templates and customizing them. So guess what? Now there is this whole fork or a local repository that they are maintaining of templates, right? So how do you address that? And that is where this whole infrastructure from code and tying it to a specific version of each application code starts making sense, and auto-generating of these templates or Terraform and Helm charts or IAC files, IAC files from the code starts making sense, right? So that you have complete flexibility, because just to sort of give my final thought on it is that when people talk about Git being this the source of truth, Git is just a repository, right? I mean, so what they're alluding to or what they eventually want is the source of truth to be moving all the way to the left, which is the application source code itself. So if you can move all the way back to the application code and tie everything or begin your process or your workflow from then onwards, that is when at least we have noticed that you can achieve that flexibility. Otherwise, you'll be ending up creating these abstraction layers, which would have the same limitations as you would if you were to just maintain an intranet website with the templates in the background.
Mm.
Yeah, we like to think of the IDP as a system of record for engineering in much the same way that Salesforce is a system of record for sales and Marketo is a system of record for marketing. Engineering's never really had a prescribed system of record. And so we're planting our flag and saying it should be the internal developer portal that should contain a service catalog. It should contain ownership. It should be continuously monitoring all of the systems that are integrated with it. And it should provide a streamlined interface for the developer to access their developer delivery platform.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
One way to think of it. And I want to shout out to Mark, who's been commenting in chat, sharing some of his experiences going back to, I guess it's Bell Labs Day or Bell Northern days. Good stuff, Mark. One of the questions that we had earlier, one of the folks ask us about how would you differentiate DevOps and platform engineering? One of the things that I think is commonly occurring, maybe not in every case, is oftentimes DevOps is supported by the platform engineering team. That is part of that delivery platform, that tool set that we're using. It doesn't have to be that way, I guess, but it seems like, is that becoming more of a common practice? That's what I'm sensing.
I think conflating the two is becoming more common. I think that DevOps and platform engineering are distinct. They're very different things, but we've said this earlier. Platform engineering relies on DevOps. So like DevOps is a set of practices. It is a methodology. It is not a thing. It is not a tool. It is a set of practices, and that set of practices does involve some specific tooling. Like you're going to have like some kind of CI/CD tooling. You are going to have some kind of like configuration management or infrastructure as code tooling. Platform engineering is taking DevOps methodologies and applying them to give us a thing that further improves developer productivity and thus the velocity of the whole company, right? But they are distinctly different, and I think we're just seeing people conflate them more often. Yeah.
I also think one way you can help distinguish and tease apart these differences is how you measure success for each one, right? So for DevOps, usually we're looking at deployment frequency, lead time to changes, MTTR, change failure rates, or things like that. How can we get code delivered quickly, safely into production? Platform engineering, they're trying to measure developer productivity. That's a whole nother thing that I bundle there, just gonna say. But how long does it take to provision environments, infrastructure uptime? Are you spinning down environments automatically? What is your cost over time? Those broader things that they are looking at, the measures between the teams may overlap in some small ways, but if your platform engineering team is measured on the same basis as your development teams, you probably need to go back and look and ensure that you have the teams that you believe you do.
I'm going to drop a study into the chat here really quick, if I may. I just had a conversation with Abhi Noda, who came on the podcast, Abhi from DX, who does a lot of great work around trying to measure developer productivity. And in fact, he talks about his life as like sort of encapsulating the challenge of failing to measure developer productivity over 3 iterations now. But this study moves the needle a bit. This study was put together by Nicole Forsgren and Margaret Ann Peggy Story and Brian Hook and a bunch of other people. And this starts taking, so you just mentioned the DORA metrics. This takes the DORA metrics and starts adding on what they're trying to establish as developer experience metrics. And these are things like flow state, context switching. This is the stuff that's really fascinating for me, because now we're seeing this really interesting merger of like neuropsychology, cognitive psychology, really feeding into what we're considering the studies of developer experience. In my mind, we're only just starting to do the really good work, even though Peopleware was published, what, in 1990 or something like that. But now I think we're finally starting to think about these things under the right sort of scientific lens and realize that, yes, we can apply a ton about lean and agile and the Toyota story and all that kind of stuff to software delivery, but that's not the same as an assembly line worker, when now adding to the value stream, you have an opinionated knowledge worker, and they have different needs and can be measured on different metrics.
Yeah, definitely want to check that out. And I'm writing a white paper that might be helpful for. Really cool. I want to bring back up the security topic. Part of me says one of the reasons you might want to consider, or you want to consider as you put together your platform engineering practice, is where security fits into, whether it's standardized configurations, security guidelines or guardrails. Maybe it's part of the processes that you're supporting in your tool chain that you do through your portal, and that workflow. You can almost tie it also to sort of the underlying software supply chain, not of the app you're building necessarily, but of the underlying tools you're using, right? So you don't have someone break into your here and get into the CI/CD flow and start injecting code. It seems like security's got to be a forefront thought about how you're creating the tools and capabilities and blueprints and workflow and all of that. Because going back and adding it in later means you've had a problem, and now now you're really in trouble. Throw that out there. What are your thoughts?
So for the listeners, I didn't include this in my intro. I'm a Kubernetes maintainer. So I deal with Kubernetes all day, every day. It's a large part of my job. And one of the largest, most common sources of your Kubernetes cluster being cracked into by somebody else is not inherently like a security issue with Kubernetes. It is a misconfiguration of Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is exceedingly complicated, right? We know it's hard to use. We're trying, to make it easier. We're trying to make it harder to misconfigure it, but misconfigurations are still the number one source of like security issues within Kubernetes. And allowing developers the ability to, like, on their own define the rules for whatever cluster they're working in, whatever pod they're working in, is not great. Not because I don't think that you should trust your engineers, you absolutely should, but because people are more likely to make mistakes than a machine is. Somebody is going to forget something at some point, and you're going to have a pod with like weird privileges that it shouldn't have, right? So automating that process, templating that process is, I think, one of the best ways that you can ensure that your cluster is secure. So it should be like a number one top of mind concern is reducing the incidence rate of stuff like that in literally everything you use.
The unnecessary variation that doesn't look up for things to happen, right? I want to hear what you're thinking about this.
Yeah,
you got the security module plugged in here. I know.
Yeah, so I've always considered security as, and you must have heard a lot of people with strong security background mention this, what you can see, you can control, right? I mean, the first step is visibility, right? I mean, being able to, whatever platform, whatever tool chain that you're using, they need to provide the basic pieces of information that could then be used in policies to enforce certain behavior. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that I think what we are seeing is that in terms of the security policies also, right? Sometimes the security policies, I mean, we have also heard a lot of people say that, security always is orthogonal to usability, right? I mean, it conflicts with usability and so on. The reason for that is the security policies are defined in certain cases, right? Again, going to an application deployment at such fine-grained and the lowest level that the developers if at all there is a security violation, they don't even know what to fix, where to fix, and then they eventually end up giving it back to some DevSecOps person or DevOps person, and then, I mean, that whole process could end up taking weeks or whatever, right? So I think what we all need to think about is, rather than specific policies, sort of being able to define security standards, if I could use that term, right? I mean, and the concept of standard, I'll just give an example, right? Rather than saying that, oh, in that AWS S3 bucket, this particular attribute needs to be turned on for enabling encryption or turned off for enabling public access. It should be just that, okay, my application does not need public access, or this application should not have any public access, or this application should have all kinds of data protection policies be enabled. I don't know as a developer what data protection policy. It could be encryption, or protection of data at rest, in transit, in use, you name it, whatever it is, right? But I don't know as specific resource-related, cloud resource-related configuration what needs to happen. So I think it also needs to go to the next level of abstraction when we are building the abstraction for the developers and taking their day-to-day life to the next higher level.
I would also like to add that one of the benefits platform engineering can bring is to ensure that developers aren't seeing security requirements as a bottleneck. Because hopefully you have your security, as everyone has been saying, right? You have your security by design. So it's not slowing them down. They're not looking for shortcuts. It's seamless and it's integrated into their workflow, whether that's their pipelines, whether it's provisioning, whatever.
Yeah, it needs to be, ideally, it needs to be just built in, right? I mean, the biggest problem that we have in security, and it's always been the case, that it's always after the fact scanning, right? There are multiple unicorns that have been built. In fact, one of the previous startup that I incubated was for IAC scanning, right? And then you just get a whole bunch of violations. Now, as a developer, what do I do with that violation, right? I mean, I don't have a clue. So that is the biggest issue, right? I mean, if it could be addressed by having the security policies or defining the standards and being able to bake in or built in security policies right at the time of creation of whatever needs to be created for deploying application, I think that's the ideal end goal that could really help the developers get out of this whole loop.
That's again where the portal, it's a huge use case for the portal abstraction. It's one of the biggest ones. I mean, you made a point, Asif, and you're spot on. Like, a lot of people find the room in the DevSecOps budgets for these things. And it's because the first thing they do is build a cross-functional scorecard that says, before we do a release, we have to have this infrastructure tag set, and we can't have any critical issues in Jira, and we blah, blah, blah. But when the portal is already ingesting all that information and continuously monitoring it, it gets it both ways. You get to interrupt, quote unquote, the developer workflow to say, hey, your security plans is at silver and it's supposed to be a gold before we do the release. But then post-release, you get that continuous monitoring to make sure that things stay the way they should. And it's not an arduous 3-week-long process, and it's not a 4-hour-long phone call, and it's completely self-service. By the way, another thing that we're finding is that this type of abstraction and transparency actually increases psychological safety, which we've seen so many really good studies over the last 3-4 months starting to come out in the DevOps Days communities and stuff. You're seeing more and more about, like, the research really bears out that when developers don't feel psychologically safe to be able to give feedback about something or take feedback about something, it's a huge productivity killer. And we figured this out back with Lean too. That's the whole pulling the cord. Anybody in the factory can pull the cord, right? Thank you for your feedback. And we knew that that works back then, but it works now too. When you are the developer and you just go to your portal and your portal says, oh gosh, I'm not compliant here, I'm not compliant here, that's not somebody yelling at you, right? That's you working the way that you want to work and that you're comfortable working. And that's going to improve your productivity as well.
By the way, I popped my LinkedIn into the chat because it wasn't in the handouts, but everybody's LinkedIn is in the handouts if you want to follow any of us on LinkedIn. Okay, after recognize this group, we have gone 44.5 minutes. No one said the word AI yet.
Yay!
Yay!
That is the record. I'm pretty sure I'll get Justin to verify, but I think that is solidly in the camp of, I'm not on one of these comments. So there's the hype of, overblown hype of AI. in development. There's sort of what we think the promise of how it is going to be helping us. Talk a little bit about where are we seeing AI making an impact today in platform engineering? Is it, and what kinds of areas? Is it having either little or it could be a lot? Whatever your thoughts are on that, and then maybe where it's going next. Who wants to jump in?
I don't think that the two are necessarily related. And I think that this is an example of trying to shoehorn AI into absolutely everything because it's a hot buzzword and it makes the shareholders and the VCs happy and it makes the number go up and to the right. I think we're seeing a ton of forcing AI into places where it absolutely does not belong because it makes investors happy. And I really don't think that it's relevant to platform engineering right now. Maybe in the future, this will all get complex enough, but like as it stands, what would an AI, a generative AI, an LLM, or whatever kind of machine learning you're using in this case, what would it be predicting for your developers? You have a tool chain, and that tool chain is defined. So what would it be predicting? It can't, I don't know. I don't love it.
Yeah.
I think it's
You're saying there's potential. Is that what you're saying, Kat?
no. I'm saying throw it off a cliff.
Okay. So, go ahead.
I think the first best use cases are not necessarily those that are going to be front and center for the developers, right? So it's going to be some AI-driven optimization, right? Predicting load, better infrastructure scaling, maybe automated incident responses that are now consolidated, hopefully, on an intelligent developer portal, and they get to see it and they get to understand something is happening. Whether it impacts them is what gets it on their board. Many moons away from today for a lot of this, but I think the first applications are going to be probably some of those broader optimization and infrastructure applications.
If I may, at least what we have in the field out there, what we have been experiencing is that there are 2 or 3 different points in the context of what we are talking about that developers are starting to experiment with Gen AI. The first thing is just generating Terraform code itself, right? Generating ISE. But as we know, it hallucinates, it has all of those problems. Then it becomes a problem that I like to give the analogy of 2 drunk people trying to check each other, right? I mean, it's like you have something that is generated by Gen AI. Now you have to build another tool which basically verifies that whatever has been generated by the Gen AI or LLM-based tool is usable, right? So many large enterprises, they're using human-in-the-loop approach, which defeats the purpose, as Justin was talking about, right? If I have to be in the loop as a DevOps person or as a platform engineering person verifying things, then we are back to square one, right? The developers are not independent, they are not as productive, not as efficient as they would like to be, right? The second place, which I think is interesting, is automatically stitching together of pipelines, right? I mean, to IDPs, I think that's a point that Hope was making earlier. In many cases, it just rolled out which is not the right way, Justin, but it's rolled out as a marketplace, right? So wouldn't it be nice that based on certain usage pattern, Gen AI tools or something that is observing and then basically comes up with those use cases and basically proposes optimization of those use cases. The third place is, again, this sort of goes out of the realm of platform engineering, but strongly ties into DevOps, is closing the loop aspect, right? You have certain applications that have been deployed and running. The resources have been changed directly into the cloud resources, and there is a drift that has been introduced. How do you bring it back, and then sort of converge it or reconcile it with all the way to your code or to your configuration file? So not everything, as I said, these 3 things, 3 use cases are directly related to platform engineering, but we are seeing some of the larger enterprises experimenting with it. And then finally, the classic thing of, hey, give me a deployment architecture for my e-commerce application that has 5 different microservices and it relies on XYZ resources, and boom, you just get the topology, right? And then rather than starting and staring at a blank canvas to begin with.
I think AI has been influencing for a while. Sorry, Hope, were you about to follow up on that?
I think you're good to go, Justin.
So I think, AI, I think we have to think about, are we talking about Gen AI? Are we talking about predictive analytics? Are we talking about machine learning, right? Predictive test selection, for instance, is a form of test set optimization that was productized at Gradle, and other people are doing this now. And it's able to do things for the developer like, hey, the last 20 times that this test ran under these same conditions, it just passed. So these conditions are now the same, so don't bother running that test. That's definitely helping. That definitely removes some toil from the developer that they didn't have to have. I think another way to think about this too is when you look at like, for instance, companies building like agentic AI systems and things like that now. The AI sits, and I was just having this conversation with Willis, quick plug for our podcast drop today. This episode is all about generative AI and platform engineering. And John Willis has, I think, some really good opinions on it. Here's your little AI down here in your functional reference architecture. Here's everything else that you need to be able to interact with that LLM, to make sure the LLM's not costing you $1 million a second in cloud costs or whatever it is. You're going to have Kafka delivering stuff. You're going to have other data sources. You're going to have interfaces, right? Platform engineering is going to help a lot with that, right? Because when we start coming up with actual, real, good, valuable use cases, someone is going to have to manage the complexity of all the pipelines and that's going to be 85% of the work. The LLM still, I predict 10 years from now, people who are doing stuff with LLM still won't know how they work. They're just going to be interfacing with them from an inference level using some kind of API.
Before I go to our last topic, I'll just throw out, it seems we're in this learning curve about generating code, we're augmenting code with AI, copilots, things like that. Seems like the incorporation of that into our developer tool set, into our pipeline, is maybe an area that platform engineering can help. Here's what we've learned, where it works is what we should be using. Here's how to use it, whatever. Seems like a good way to share that anyway. The last question is, if I'm somebody who's like, I think I might want to go do platform engineering. That might be a move I want to make in my career, next step. Or maybe I'm building a team. I'm looking for people. What are the parts of the job that would attract someone to it, that say, yeah, that's what I'd like to do? How would you know you want to be a platform engineer when you grow up? Anybody want to start first?
It pays well.
Yeah,
It pays well.
it's a
bad reason. Thank you.
It pays well. I super don't believe that you need to like pretend that you're in tech because like you're passionate about it. I'm passionate about paying my bills and being able to go on vacation, and that's okay. Like that's fine. That's good. Even platform engineering pays well. Just like 5-10 years ago, you wanted DevOps in your job title because it was hot and it still pays well and it's still hot. But like that's a totally valid decision to make, to look at that and go, that's hot, that's paying well, I will do that.
Not a bad reason. That's pretty pragmatic and in a good way.
And I think that is all true. But I know for me, other than that point, which is a leading point, let me not make a mistake, is if you want to be the person that plays with all of the toys first, even the toys that don't end up being deployed, and you get to look at it, you get to evaluate it, you get to tinker with it. It's great for someone who loves to learn and is endlessly curious about all aspects of technology. And maybe you decide you want to specialize and branch out and say, you know what, I'm just going to focus on SRE. There are opportunities there, but if you're really curious and you like to play with all the toys first, it's a great spot.
It's a really good point, Hope. Like, I think people with a knack for sort of systems thinking, like in the Deming sense of the word of systems thinking, are going to really be attracted to this space because you can write some code and you can mess with some systems and you can mess with some containers and you can see how it all works together and you can think very laterally and abstractly. And I've plugged Cortex enough, so I'll actually plug one of our competitors, kind of. Humanitech has published really a good set of what I think are good reference, like functional reference architecture for the platform. And they're totally free. They're part of their platform engineering community. And Humanitech's going to come to our conference this year too, so we are friends. I'm just kidding. No. Until one of us hits 100 million, none of us are really competing. But I would also recommend that as a really good starting place for somebody who would perhaps like the closest thing that we could offer to a blueprint around platform engineering. I think Humanitech's doing some really great work in that space.
Great. Awesome. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think this pretty much echoes what Hope laid out. For me, or people who are interested in always figuring out that what's new, right, on the block, or trying things out, not from the perspective of, hey, in my daytime job, how can I prevent people from using these latest technologies and creating the guardrails? But it's more from the perspective of how do I enable and bring these things, be it serverless, be it containers, right? I mean, a few years ago. So I think, if you are choosing to embark on that journey, then be ready to constantly keep learning and keep your foot out there, so to speak, right? I mean, always pick up new things that is coming in the open source community, coming from vendors or whatever, right? And it's very exciting. I mean, you're always going to be at the cutting edge of things, in the know of things. So, yeah, I mean, that's my advice. Sign up only if you're willing to sign up for all of those other things.
Yeah, I want to highlight also. Thank you, Asif. Highlight what Mark, posted in comment, which is what I was going to say is. It is about helping people and helping their lives, their work life be better, and maybe removing some bottleneck, making flow, making it easier just to get stuff done. So I think for you, that tinkerer and that technologist, as well as system thinker, and there's the people wrapped around of why you're doing all of this, because you're trying to help people in their work and make their lives better. I think that's a nice mix of all of those things. So good stuff. Well, hey, I feel like I owe you all. I should be sending you a Venmo after the meeting here. I'm not promising to do that, but to thank you all for sharing all this knowledge and expertise and experience with our audience. And it's been a pleasure. Thanks to your companies, the folks that have had companies help you be here. We appreciate that as well. Kat, Hope, Asif, Justin, welcome. Thank you. Goodbye. We appreciate you being here with us. Look forward to the next chance that we get to do this. Before I turn it back over to Jared, I also want to offer my thanks to everyone for being here with us. The fact that you spent an hour of your time is extremely valuable, and we are honored that you would spend it with us. So thank you very much. We appreciate all of your input and contribution to today. And thanks to you, Jared. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. One quick thing before we close out. I do want to reiterate, we do have some resources or some handouts in the resource section. We've also got a 1-minute survey. It takes just a second for you to fill it out. It's 4 questions, if even that. Go ahead and fill that out for us. It helps us know what content you want to hear from us. At the end of the day, your input is invaluable to us. It really helps us shape everything that we're doing here at TechStrong. So once again, this program is recorded. You will receive an email in your inbox shortly after we conclude the session, after I close out here. And again, I want to thank all of our panelists for taking the time to join us. It's been a pleasure having you and listening to all of your thoughts and your experiences. And once again, thank you all for joining today's program. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on our next TechStrong Learning program. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.